it's much more psychologically achievable to have a bottom-up approach from the day to the week to the month, rather than a top-down approach from the month to the week to the day. Speaking about a topic like time management sounds so cliche because we usually hear all sorts of pieces of advice, and when we take them seriously and try to practically implement them within our own lives, it seems to stay for like 2 or 3 days and then it washes away with whatever distraction or whatever thing we're trying to do. But I think there are certain principles we can actually establish in order for us to incrementally work towards better use of our time, let's say. And I think if I had to actually bet on one principle, it would be to actually focus on short-term goals, daily/weekly, rather than long-term goals, monthly goals. And the reason why I say this is because from my experience, my assessment of long-term goals is just so bad or so much worse than actually assessing daily/weekly goals. So for example, if we take Java, learning Java, which is a programming language, if we set it as a monthly goal to learn the programming language of Java, most likely you would reach halfway there and then you would look at that goal and you would say, whoa, it's too far. Because as I said, usually the assessment of long-term goals is just so bad. You usually overburden yourself, at least from my experience. But if we look on the other hand at daily/weekly goals, if you say like, for example, I'm going to solve Java problems every day for 2 hours, then you would spontaneously or organically work yourself towards that goal of learning the language. So that's why I think it's better to actually set short-term goals. Of course, you have vague long-term goals, so things you want to do, but it shouldn't be set in stone in some sense, at least initially. You just, with time, I think if you have short-term goals, you're going to learn how much is actually enough for you as a long-term goal. But I think initially it's better to actually work yourself with short-term goals to actually understand yourself much better when it comes to actually achieving and getting things done. And one thing I would say before actually moving on to the second principle is that this is not to say that you should be a loose cannon without any deadlines. But I think it's stressing on the fact that it's much more psychologically achievable to have a bottom-up approach from the day to the week to the month, rather than a top-down approach from the month to the week to the day. So this leads us to the second principle, which is to have 3 introspective or personal problems to solve every week. 3 is a little bit of a random number. You can actually increase it or decrease it, whatever you see fit. But the idea stays the same, which is to have or build this feedback loop of actually identifying problems in your life and solving them. And I think this might not seem like it's very much related to time management, but just building this feedback loop of identifying problems within yourself or your psyche and actually solving them every week is a very organic feedback loop, let's say, that can actually add on to other aspects of life, let's say. And when I say introspective problems, I don't really mean just big problems, maybe small problems like waking up as soon as the alarm rings, for example, and not snoozing the alarm. So those small things actually make a big difference when it comes to time management, I think, because they give you the impression of actually sitting and forcing yourself to identify your own problems and by extension solve them. And one problem might actually recur for 3 consecutive weeks, but the context here is to have this kind of culture, let's say, to identify problems and try to solve them and see where the weaknesses lie in this feedback loop, let's say. So with that, we conclude the video. Let me know down in the comments if you actually find this approach beneficial towards your time management. And thank you very much for allocating time to watch this, and see you next time.